Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got another great show for you guys today. Happy Friday. We made it through the week. And boy, what a week it has been. I've got some fantastic stories for you today. For one, we're going to talk a little bit about the budget that was signed earlier this morning. Of course, Republicans and Democrats worked late into yesterday to try to put an end to the or prevent a government shutdown. There actually was a very short shutdown, but I'm going to have the news on that today of what's in the budget, what the Democrats agreed to, and why it's actually a terrible budget. Then we have a story sent in by a viewer talking about drone strikes. Yes, the drone program left over from the Obama administration. It's actually worse than it was under the Obama administration. So we'll talk about that. Then we got some White House drama. I'm going to talk about the Rob Porter scandal, and I'm going to tell you what it ultimately might lead to. And I think you might be a little surprised. There are a lot of twists and turns in that story. I'm actually looking forward to it because it is a lot of drama. There are a lot of drama in that story. So that'll be a lot of fun. Then we have more policy news. We're going to talk about labor unions and millennials. And then finally, if this week was not filled with enough bad news, we have reports where police officers in California actively teamed up with white supremacist groups. And they knew they were white supremacists to go after anti-white supremacists. That's amazing. And equally disastrous. So all those stories we have today right here around the nation. Now, before I get into the rest of the show, I want to thank everybody for watching. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you happen to be listening or watching this stream at. Please help spread the message. Sharing is caring. It helps us out a great deal. All right. That said, let's see. I do want to get into the stories, but I also want to make sure that people can get here because I've been noticing, of course, and I mentioned this before, that our notifications no longer get out. So that is a bit problematic. So I do want to wait for some of you to get here so you don't miss the stories. And if you do end up missing the stories, then, of course, you can always go to our YouTube page. The whole stream I leave up so you guys can go and watch the whole show. And also through the you can also watch the clips as well. So there are definitely ways for you guys to catch up. All right. That said, let's jump into our first story. Let's talk about the budget deal. I think you know where I'm going with this one. Now, President Trump just ended the second government shutdown earlier this morning by signing a massive spending bill into law. Now, according to CNN, the massive two-year budget deal proposed by Senate leaders on Wednesday and actually signed into law on Friday raises the budget cap by about $300 billion in the next 2 years, would increase the debt ceiling, and offers up nearly $90 billion in disaster relief for hurricane-ravaged Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico. It also saves CHIP and things like that, infrastructure spending. So, in all, the deal seemed to be okay, at least for a couple of parts. Now, the politics of this, of course, is not on the side of the Democrats. It's actually siding the Republicans. The Democrats are touting this is some, this is a great deal. Yes, I know we don't have anything for people that are DACA recipients. Obviously, they were left out of this, as they usually are. But hey, well, look, we saved CHIP funding and we're funding the government. But what did you get out of it? You got things that normally Republicans say that they support. So in reality, you got next to nothing. However, that's politically, right? But here's what they actually got. uh, about $165 billion would go to the Pentagon and $131 billion to non-defense programs. So basically, what they did in this budget is they finally ended the sequester. You know, the thing that was supposed to be so bad back during the Obama administration that it would get Republicans and Democrats to sit down together and actually do a deal to avoid these massive cuts in both military and non-military discretionary spending. Well, finally, years later, we seem to have actually done that. So the caps on domestic spending would end, which is okay, that's good. At the same time, we're going to give more and more to the massive military budget. So now understand here, right, that our budget is now defense and non-defense. So in defense, we spend way more on defense than anything else. Let me show you a chart here that kind of breaks this thing down, right? So this is for fiscal year 2017. Look at that budget. That's proposed budget. Here we have the military outpacing spending on everything. And that is before this deal, right? This is before the $165 billion plus whatever Trump wants to drop onto the military budget for this year. Already last year, half our spending, over half our spending. Now, if you think that goes to our soldiers, right? If you're somebody who supports the troops, then you'll be sorely disappointed because let me give you the facts on how much soldiers make. An E1 enlisting into the military makes an average of $19,000 a year. That is barely over the minimum wage. That money ain't going to no soldiers. I mean, yes, sure, they get housing assistance and other bonuses like that, but on the other hand, a lot of our servicemen and women also have to go on food stamps to survive. So, look, that money, as I said, ain't going to the troops. Where is it going? I think the answer is pretty obvious. It goes to defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, etc., right? It goes right into their pockets, billions and billions of dollars for war, so we can drop more bombs on Syria. So many bombs that we actually physically run out of bombs. We don't have enough. We ran through our stockpile. Now we got to make more bombs. Well, how does that help us, the American people, dropping bombs on Syria? It doesn't. When's the last time Bashar al-Assad attacked America? When's the last time any of these places that we are bombing have attacked America? It doesn't make any sense, but of course, we're bombing the hell out of everybody. And by the way, how does bombing Syria help the Syrian people? It actually does not. It actually causes even more misery. Do you know how many innocent people we have killed from our constant warfare? Thousands. And over 1 million people died from George W. Bush's wars and the wars that have continued under President Obama and now have unfortunately continued under Donald Trump. And look, we continue to give more and more and more to the war machine. In fact, Speaker Paul Ryan told Hugh Hewitt on his show in reference to lifting those defense spending caps, he said, quote, "Our members who are focused on the military are very happy we landed with that $165 billion. You know what that translates into? The donors. The donors are incredibly happy because guess what? They get to make billions more dollars. Now, some of the other stuff that's in this bill, the debt ceiling, of course, will be raised until 2018. $10 billion to invest in infrastructure, $2.9 billion for child care, and $3 billion to combat opioid and substance abuse. That is pennies. That is chump change compared to what we have actually given to the defense industry. Look, $10 billion for infrastructure, right? We need a lot more than that to actually fix our crumbling infrastructure. We're rated at D+ when it comes to what our infrastructure is actually rated by the Army Corps of Engineers. That means that our infrastructure is terrible. It's falling apart. We have people, for example, in Flint that don't have clean water anymore. We have sections of Puerto Rico, large sections of Puerto Rico, that don't even have power. You have millions of people across the United States that have lead in their water supplies. But no. We can't spend We can allocate some chump change over to that. Nowhere near what they need to actually solve the problem, because we have to give it all to the military. We have to give it all to the war machine. If you don't understand that there is something massively wrong with the way that we are spending our money, that the way that we are allocating our money, then I don't think you get it. The more we spend on endless war, the less we can spend on things that actually matter. Education, healthcare, infrastructure, veterans care. You care about the troops, right? Well, I just showed you that they're not actually getting any of this money. And they're not actually getting any more help with veterans' healthcare. We're not taking care of our troops, but we are taking care of the giant multinational defense contractors, these corporations that are taking all of this money. We've got to stop putting more money into war, man. We got to stop supporting politicians that will vote for more and more militarism. We have to step up and demand that we end all these ridiculous wars for corporate gain. I mean, we had protesters that stepped up in order to protest Vietnam. Where's that today? Where's that today? I know the right. Look, during the Iraq War, we had people that would protest, and they would be called traitors. Oh, you hate the troops. You hate the troops. No, we hate the wars, the endless wars. The best way to take care of our soldiers is to not send them into endless wars. But that's what we're doing. And they have tied in this. The right has this militarism in with patriotism and nationalism. That is not patriotism. Patriotism is about taking care of your country, taking care of your own. That includes taking care of the troops and making sure that they don't get sent into endless wars for profit. That's what that's about. And I'm a patriot. I love this country enough to point out the problems so that we can fix it. But unfortunately, like I said, so many people have fallen into the nationalist rhetoric of the right wing. And now there is no more anti-war left. It doesn't exist anymore. And so we've got to bring that back. We've got to oppose these endless wars. And we've got to bring the troops home. And we've got to slash defense spending so we can actually start to take care of our own people and stop being the policeman for the world. Okay. I have more on the war. Let's move on. Okay. Funny graphic, but actually not a it's not actually a funny story, but nonetheless, we'll go into it. Now, the drone program is something that has been extensively used by presidents since the Obama administration. Look, the Bush administration actually had used drones, but during the Obama administration, we actually have ramped it up, and we've used it in a lot of undeclared, unsanctioned wars across the world. I mean, again, just send the drones. We don't have to send troops. Troops will be considered an invasion. We just send a drone. And they will do something called signature strikes. I've talked about that before. Now, under the Obama administration, according to leaked 2013 Justice Department memos, approximately 2,300 to 3,400 people were killed in drone strikes. That's what we know. The numbers actually could be much larger. Another memo about U.S. drone attacks from that time estimated that 90% of those killed in those attacks were not actually intended to be killed, and in many instances were actually women and children. So, oh great, not only do we have all these deaths from these drone strikes, these, again, where we haven't actually declared war on these countries, we're just going in, we're just bombing people indiscriminately. 90% of those are women and children. They're not actually terrorists. Wonderful. That is incredibly disastrous. And that was under President Obama. For a president that won a Nobel Peace Prize, it didn't seem very peaceful. Okay? Now, he, of course, continued the wars from George W. Bush and used that drone program. He expanded that drone program and ended up killing 90% of innocent people, right? If you didn't think that was bad enough, wait till you get a load of the numbers under Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, he's got to outdo President Obama on everything, right? So he sees the drone program, he sees these drone numbers, and he's like, hold my beer. Now, according to the human rights groups, Reprieve reports that based on the latest estimates, in the 7 months following Trump's inauguration, coalition airstrikes were estimated to have killed between 2,800 and 4,500 civilians. Reprieve says, quote, "We have uncovered extensive evidence that the U.S. has breached international law and violated fundamental human rights, killing thousands of adults and children in the process, 80% of whom have never even been named." Now, let me give you an example of one of these attacks. Now, this was authorized by President Trump, and in this attack, it saw 23 civilians, including 10 children under the age of 12, brutally killed. This is one of them. And President Trump has authorized hundreds, if not thousands, of drone strikes already. We're bombing the shit out of these countries. Now, do you hear a lot about that? No, it's because nobody cares. Look, mainstream media doesn't talk about it. MSNBC doesn't talk about the fact that we're in endless wars. MSNBC's all about Russia. Russia. You turn on Rachel Maddow, you don't hear about us being in endless wars and killing civilians. No, you hear about Russia. I'm not saying that you can't talk about Russia, but my God, man, you can't just ignore the fact that we are killing innocent civilians overseas, and nobody's talking about it. The CNN doesn't even talk about how we're at war. In fact, Brian Williams on NBC, he talked about how majestic our weapons of war are. He gets a thrill up his leg every time he looks at a Tomahawk missile. It's disgusting, right? He doesn't talk about these weapons. He doesn't talk about the human cost of these weapons. Nobody talks about them. In fact, the only people that do talk about them are the politicians when they want to brag about how they love defense. Oh, we got to increase the defense budget because we got to keep America safe, right? We're keeping America safe. I was killing 4,500 civilians in 7 months, keeping America safe. That's not keeping America safe. That's actually creating more terrorism and more death. And yet, Donald Trump, President Trump, wants to call this a win. No, it's a win when we bomb civilians overseas. Because we don't know if they're terrorists. We know what the CIA does. The CIA actually frequently adopts a policy that would classify people as combatants simply for being in an area where they say that enemy activity is taking place. Hey man, you just happen to be in that area. You must be a terrorist. You were holding a shovel. You were at a wedding. And look, there were frequently stories of people that were having weddings in these areas. And yeah, it's stupid, but sometimes what they do during weddings in those areas is they shoot guns in the air. You shoot a gun in the air near a drone, that's it. You're gone. We have bombed so many weddings. We have bombed so many people that are innocent. And then we retroactively say, I don't know, they could have been a terrorist. And we don't apologize for it. I mean, it's disgusting, right? But even more damning than the silence from the media about this is just the American acceptance of endless warfare. We don't even register. We don't even think about the people that are at war. We don't even think about the constant drone strikes that are happening under our watch, that happened under President Obama, that happened under President Bush, and that are now happening under President Trump. We don't think about that. Why? It's because the money. Look at who funds the media. Look at who funds the politicians. A lot of that money comes from the defense contractors. These are the people that in the newest budget got an extra $165 billion. That money does not go to the troops. That money goes into bombs. That money goes right into their pockets, into their bottom lines. This is blood money. And a lot of that money also gets used to buy off our politicians, both Democrats and Republicans. And that's why you have so few Democrats that are actually standing against these wars. Where is the anti-war left? It doesn't exist anymore. These corporate Democrats are bought by the same people that Republicans are. They get paid by the same defense contractors. And it's all about war. Look, this program, this drone program, the way that it was overseen was bad, immoral, destructive, and counterproductive. Creates more terror than it actually solves. And this was under President Obama. But under Donald Trump, it's gotten even worse. And I had the numbers to show you. Look, man, we got to end this. We got to end these unsanctioned drone strikes. If we're going to go to war with somebody, then at least we should have it declared through Congress first, so we can actually get it authorized, so we can actually make it official, instead of sending these drones over to kill people. And we've got to end the use of signature strikes. We have got to make sure that if we're going to use a drone at all, then we got to make sure that's exactly who we're going after before we go after them. And that there are no civilians in this area. That's it. Like I said, if you're going to use drones at all. But, like I said, we've got to end this. We've got to put a stop to this. And the best way to do that is to get people informed. Because most people you talk to, they don't even know we're in half these countries doing half of these things. They don't know about the atrocities that are committed in their name. And they'll use the excuse, the people in charge, no, we're just defending you. We're just defending you. What are some of those innocent people? How does bombing innocent people defend you? No, it creates more terror. It creates more terrorists. You bomb somebody's family in a wedding, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to radicalize, and then they're going to come after you. They're going to come after America. We don't want to do that. We got to stop creating terrorists in the first place. And again, the best way to do that is to actually let people know what the government is doing so that we can put a stop to it. So we can stop voting for politicians that profit off endless war. And so we can stop believing in lies, the kind of lies that led us into Iraq in the first place, and the kind of lies that they're spreading about Syria right now. We've got to rise up, and we've got to stop endless war. Okay. It's sad. Okay. Let's go from that to some drama. Let's lighten it up a little bit. Only a little. Still fairly disastrous. So there's a little bit of drama going on in the White House over Rob Porter. Now, Rob Porter is a former aide that recently resigned over reports that he had engaged in spousal abuse. But don't worry, Donald Trump surrounds himself with the best people. To be fair, I'm going to tell you something positive about Donald Trump later. But this story actually comes with a lot of moving parts. So I'm going to kind of try to break this down to the best of my ability, because it gets very, very involved. So here's some background context. So Rob Porter, of course, was a Trump staffer in the White House. And he had risen through the ranks, and he ended up getting a very important job. Because for the last year, he's been the guy who actually controls all the information that reaches the president. Now, he was, of course, brought in by John Kelly, but he was also somebody who had worked under Reince Priebus. Now, before John Kelly had arrived and brought some order to the White House, anybody could just put anything in front of Donald Trump on his desk. Now, usually that ended up being Steve Bannon that would put Breitbart articles in front of the president. Or you had Omarosa, who would put negative articles about Donald Trump in front of him, and that would put him into a rage. And Donald Trump would rage at whatever topic that he'd seen in front of him, and he would go on Twitter and do these crazy tirades, right? Now, when Kelly replaced Priebus, Kelly brought order. Now, I don't like John Kelly. I think he's a horrible person in 12 different ways, but at least he would ensure that actual facts ended up in front of the president. so that he would know what's actually going on. So now that person that was there to deliver those facts was Rob Porter. So again, he had a really important position. He was allied with John Kelly. Now that actually plays into the story. It's actually very, very important. Now the allegations are that Porter not only abused two of his ex-wives, but an ex-girlfriend as well. Now, interestingly enough, this was reported by the Daily Mail, of all places, because the Daily Mail is owned by the same people that own Fox News. So why would they put out a negative article about somebody working in the Trump White House? Very interesting. So we'll go to that. But first, let me give you some of the details of the allegations. Now, his first wife was Colby Holderness, right? And she said that he was very verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive. Now, let me give you some examples here, and this is reported by The Intercept. The thing he would do most frequently is he would throw me down in a bed, and he would just put his body weight on me, and he'd be yelling at me, but as he was yelling, he'd be grinding an elbow or knee into my body to emphasize his anger. Now, that happened quite a few times, allegedly, and then he later on graduated to choking her, but not to the point of actually leaving physical marks. Now, Holderness did point out that it did get to a point of where he did leave physical marks on her. He actually punched her in very, very hard in the eye during a vacation in Florence in 2005. Now, that actually left her with a black eye, and she has pictures. Let me show you some of those. So, it's a little bit of a warning here. This is hard to look at. So, that's a picture of Holderness with that black eye. And then we have a close-up picture right there. So, okay. Now, Holderness continues. She said, "He only punched me once in the eye. He threw me down in the bed and punched me in the face. I think he was shocked at, hold on here. I think he was shocked that he had lost control to that extent. Up until then, he would always done it in a way that didn't leave marks. I don't know if that was conscious or not. He would get angry and throw me down on a soft surface. To his credit, it was always a soft surface, like a couch or a bed." Dude, that doesn't make it better. You shouldn't be throwing anybody down on anything. Period. The fact that she gave him credit, I think, just shows how deep both the emotional and physical abuse actually went. When you're saying, "Hey, man, at least you threw me down into something nice," well, that right there is a sign that you have definitely been abused. Now, his second marriage, that was his first one. His second one didn't fare much better. Now, this was to Jennifer Willoughby. Now, Jennifer Willoughby actually talked to the Daily Mail. She described her relationship as one where he had to walk on eggshells in order to avoid Porter's explosive anger. In fact, one instance is where they were having an argument. She decided, "I'm going to go take a shower." And he said, no, that's not going to happen. He went to the shower, pulled her naked from it, and just began to go off on her. Now, she said that throughout the relationship, his anger would be very, very unpredictable, and that throughout the entire thing, he was very manipulative. She said, quote, "He's very intelligent, extremely good with his words, and is a lawyer by profession, and is able to take words that I had said and use them in a way that would confuse me as to what I meant. Quote, he would challenge my intelligence or a statement that I had made by implying that I couldn't have possibly come up with it on my own and that I must have been influenced by someone." So the effect of that, of course, would be very clear. I would start to doubt myself. He was using words against me. It was his norm in dealing with behavior he didn't like. So, look, that is obvious. I think that, to me, that seems like gaslighting, right? No, you couldn't have possibly come out with that on your own. You're too stupid. You must have been influenced by your friends. Well, I'm not going to let you see your friends anymore. That's horrible. But that's the kind of stuff that apparently he would allegedly do. Okay. Now, this abuse, of course, both mentally and physically, got so bad that she actually had to get out. Now, she tried to get out of that relationship. He apparently did not give up so easy. And on June 19th, 2010, she had filed a protective order against Rob because he had violated their separation agreement. He actually showed up to their apartment and wouldn't want to leave. According to a complaint filed with police, he punched the glass on the door to their home, cutting his hand in the process, at which point she called the police. He then left, and following that, she filed a temporary protective order. So, now what's his explanation for the things that he had done? You're going to love this. Quote, in the first weeks and months, his explanation for his anger was that his first marriage had been very toxic, rooted in arguments, accusations, and manipulation, and he was carrying over from that relationship. He would say that he was so used to being treated this way by his ex-wife that he was projecting that onto me. That was the explanation. Look, even if that were true, which we're not entirely sure of, but even if you had been treated poorly, that's no excuse to treat your next girlfriend in the same way. It's a very, very poor explanation, and not at all a good excuse. Now, there was also a girlfriend that had this similar story. So, look, this is why he actually, despite being in a very high position in the White House, couldn't get any sort of clearance in the FBI. They found this due to a background check. So they're like, we can't exactly give you clearance. You've got all this stuff in the past. And John Kelly knew about this, right? And they're like, no, don't worry about it. We're still going to let you handle the information that reaches the President of the United States. You don't need a security clearance for that. Now, what's interesting about this case is that, well, look at the timing, right? When did it come up? Just recently. Now, the Daily Mail, again, started digging into his past. Journalists had unearthed blog posts by Willoughby that talked about this abuse, and they went and talked to her. Now, what does that say to you? You don't just stumble upon this for no reason. No, somebody was looking for this stuff. This reeks of opposition research, which opposition research, right or wrong, is there for a reason. People use it to find out what you may or may not have done in your past. Well, he may or may not have done this abuse in the past. So, now look, Porter, he disputes these accounts, of course, and at first when this broke, John Kelly and Hope Hicks both released statements supporting Porter. Now, this is where it gets even more complicated. Now, here's John Kelly's statement. When this broke, he said, quote, Rob Porter is a man of true integrity and honor, and I can't say enough good things about him. He's a friend, confidant, and a trusted professional. I am proud to serve alongside him. Okay, so that was his statement. Now, John Kelly, as this continued to unfold, he came out with another statement that was kind of a backtrack. He said, I was shocked by the new allegations released today against Rob Porter. There is no place for domestic violence in our society. Now, look, there are some reports that John Kelly knew about this. And there are some reports that would be pretty damning that he covered this up. Oh, yeah, I knew about this, but I don't care about it. I don't care. I still want him to work here. Fascinating. Now, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, at the behest of Hope Hicks, also released a statement saying, quote, I have worked directly with Rob Porter nearly every day for the last year, and the person I know is someone of the highest integrity and exemplary character. Now, just recently, the White House backed off from that. So here you have Raj Shah, White House Deputy Press Secretary, now saying, quote, I think it's fair that we all could have done better over the last few hours or the last few days in dealing with this situation. Even more complicated. There is rumor going around. No, not rumor. There had been rumor, and actually it was confirmed because of pictures of them kissing in a cab, that Hope Hicks is now dating Rob Porter. Oh no, don't do it. Get out of there. Abort. Get out. Get out. Get out. Look, again, if these allegations are true, she's in for a world of hurt, and I don't wish that upon her. So, but it makes you kind of understand why she would take the lead in putting out a statement defending her boyfriend through Huckabee Sanders. Now, when Donald Trump finds out about that, he's actually livid. In fact, Trump was described as being, quote, fucking pissed that he was not aware of the severity of the allegations against Porter until Ivanka Trump showed him the photos Porter's ex-wife provided the Daily Mail. So that, of course, is the black eye picture. Now, what does this mean? Again, the knives, I believe, are out for John Kelly. John Kelly, what does John Kelly have to do with this? Again, John Kelly brought him in there. John Kelly brought order. And there are forces arrayed inside the White House that are against John Kelly. See, what happened is, if Kelly knew about these allegations, and I think all of us will agree, these allegations are true, and John Kelly knew about them beforehand, and he tried to cover it up, then it's obvious he's got to go. And that, I think, is the goal from the outset. Again, why would they have to be after John Kelly? Well, this is a factionalized White House. And what happened when John Kelly took over for Reince Priebus is that he imposed order on a very disorderly White House. And he did that by cutting off access to the president to pretty much everybody. Everyone has to go through him. All information has to go through him and gets handed to the president by Rob Porter. So what happened when this came out? Well, immediately you had Corey Lewandowski, who was fired from the Trump administration. Anthony Scaramucci, who lasted 11 days. You also have Ivanka Trump, who had her access to the president, her own father, cut off. And you have Jared Kushner, who has been blamed by the president for I think some Russia investigation or something related to Russia. Now, look, Ivanka, very important because she was the one to show the photos in the first place. Look, can you believe it, what this guy did? And you let Hope Hicks go out there and tell Huckabee Sanders to go and defend this guy? Jeez. Look, if anybody knows how to push daddy's buttons, it's Ivanka Trump. So, oh boy. Now, there's another piece to this. I don't know how important it is. And it's just rumor, right? A little bit of rumor, a little innuendo, take it as you will. And I don't know if it's true. And if it is or isn't, especially if it isn't, then I feel absolutely horrible for her. But there's that rumor going around that Hope Hicks and Donald Trump might be a bit of a thing. Oh no. At least we know that Donald Trump, or we can assume from the rumors, if they're true, that Donald Trump is kind of interested in Hope Hicks. You know what I mean? And so maybe him finding out this relationship with Porter that was kept under wraps behind his back could be the reason that he's so livid. And let me point out why I believe that way. Normally, Donald Trump doesn't care about domestic violence. Again, he has his own past and also had supported pedophile Roy Moore. He had all his different marriages with that alleged abuse. And kind of makes you wonder why he might be so angry about this. I don't know. But the whole point is, this entire scandal, which is rocking the White House, might be the end of John Kelly. Again, you had reports earlier about John Kelly, or about Donald Trump complaining about John Kelly to Reince Priebus. So he would call up Reince Priebus after Reince is gone. So he calls up his old buddy Reince, right? And he's like, oh, can you believe what John Kelly's doing? This would have never happened if you were there. So that's weird. And calling up some of his other friends, again, Lewandowski, things like that. And one of the things that he was mad at John Kelly for is John Kelly wasn't going out on TV and protecting him enough. Fascinating. So, look, I think it's clear that they want to get rid of Kelly. Ivanka wants to get rid of Kelly, working with other people to get rid of Kelly. so they can get that access back. Now, what happens if Kelly is gone? Chaos reigns. Again, look, even if you think the current White House is dysfunctional, and I believe it is, it's not nearly as dysfunctional as it was before John Kelly had taken over. So if they remove Kelly, there goes your semblance of order. This White House is going to be plunged in chaos. It will return. So whatever that means for the country, I couldn't tell you. But we'll see if all this pans out, if Kelly is gone. I would actually, at this point, put my money on it. He is not long for this administration. So, okay. That's a crazy, crazy story. All right, let's move on. So the economic, let me start that again. So the economic situation for a lot of millennials is actually not so great. I mean, for example, we face lower wages, higher rent, higher prices for commodities, food, fuel. We've got student loan debt. We're actually bogged down by that, and a lot of bad job prospects. We don't nearly have as good as job prospects as previous generations. To put it bluntly, millennials have been fucked. Now, look, it's not just millennials, of course. Previous generations have also seen their wages decline. In fact, over the last 30 years, we have seen wages that have stagnated while worker productivity has increased. Now, a lot of that, of course, has to do with Ronald Reagan tax cuts, deregulation, the influence of money in politics, and we've also seen, as wages decrease, something else has happened. Labor. The share of people in labor unions has also decreased. Now, that actually can be correlated with the fact that wages have been stagnant. Workers haven't been able to get ahead because they no longer have representation in the workplace. Now, millennials, interestingly enough, they have this thing called the internet, and that can actually research and see what the hell's going on. Like, what happened to our wages? Why were wages better back in the 70s and 80s? Well, one reason is because labor unions. So now millennials are joining labor unions at a higher rate. In fact, according to the Economic Policy Institute, 76% of new union members in 2017 were now younger than 35. So they're part of the millennial generation. Now, according to the same article, these numbers represent a significant break with recent history. Younger workers have always been less likely than older ones to be unionized, and this is still the case. However, roughly 8% of workers under 34 are union members, compared to with around 13% of workers 35 or older, but that is beginning to change. Nearly 1 in 4 new jobs among younger workers in 2017 was a union job. Now, recent polling also suggests that young workers identify with organized labor. Last year, Pew Research found that 75% of 18 to 29-year-olds, including 55% of young Republicans, which are actually more liberal than older Republicans, have favorable views of labor unions. In fact, look, there's been a lot of discussion that labor unions are not only needed, but they're actually necessary. And this is from an article in the Business Insider. So we need strong unions to counterbalance corporations, to counterbalance corporate executives. It's not because we hate corporate executives. It's because there is an imbalance of power in the workplace. And when people actually get together and fight for their own benefits, things like that, well, then guess what? You actually do get better benefits and better pay, things like that. So now, John Smith, who's the vice president of the Economic Policy Institute, he said that there is a reason why younger people are looking to labor unions. They said that the difficult economic landscape facing young people and a growing sense of powerlessness is an obvious reason why unions are getting a bump. He said, quote, "It is possible that the imagination of young people has been sparked." Well, I would say that is absolutely correct. You do have a lot of younger people that see what's going on in the marketplace. We don't have, the legacy unions or legacy membership that some people have, or the legacy pay. We're starting out at the bottom of the totem pole, and it's actually very, very harsh and very unforgiving to new workers. In fact, newer workers often get paid much, much less than newer workers had in previous times. So I guess let me give you an example. Let me kind of explain that. Some newer workers in some manufacturing plants, for example, they get hired in at $9 an hour, whereas 5 years previously, or 5 or 10, give or take, however long you want to put, those same workers, well, not the same workers, but workers that were hiring in as new workers at the same place would often start out at $10, $11 an hour. So those wages have continued to decrease for newer workers. So that's gotten a lot of these younger millennials, these newer workers, to go, hey, wait a minute, we need to even the playing field. And the best way to do so is to be in a union. In fact, a lot of people are more receptive to the idea of being in a union in order to counterbalance to the people, or the power of the people that they end up working for. Now, I want to attest to this personally because I was in a union. And unsurprisingly, what happened? I got paid more, I had better benefits, and I was actually treated more like a valued worker than when I had worked at a non-unionized factory. And I've shared details on this before. I had received, like I said, better benefits, better insurance, better pay, and was actually responsible for a little bit less than I was at a non-union shop. So, and that's because, of course, we had the ability to, if we had a problem, take it up with our union representative, and they would bring our concerns to management, and they would work something out. Without that, you were basically at the mercy of your boss. That's why I always be on the side of labor unions. Now, Schmidt also points out that the industries that are experiencing the most overall growth in unionization, including the public sector, construction, information, and education. So I think manufacturing could also use a bump in labor representation. Let me give you an example of where unions exist and where they work in manufacturing. GM, for example, has a union, right? Now, they made $1.2 billion in profit the last year. Now, they have a profit-sharing program that's negotiated by this union. So let me tell you how much the workers got from this profit-sharing program. They received a bonus of nearly $12,000. That is $12,000. Not $1,200, $12,000. That sure as hell beats the hell out of the $1,000 bonus that these companies are crowing about when it comes to the tax cuts. And look, in a lot of places, you didn't even get that bonus. You had to be there, for example, at Walmart for 20 years in order to get that $1,000 bonus. But if you're a GM worker and your company does better and they have a profit sharing program, they will give you $12,000 for helping out the company. If that's not a reason to unionize, I don't know what is. I actually believe that the company should share the profits with their workers. Now, here's the thing, right? Again, we need a counterbalance in order to bring fairness to the workers. Now, unfortunately, the workers don't have this power because the elites want to keep it, and they have done everything in their power to be able to keep this power, including paying off politicians and corporate Democrats. And look, you've seen the Democratic Party distance themselves from labor before. Remember President Obama wanted to put on his walking shoes and promised to walk the picket line if they tried to put in right to work in Wisconsin. Where were you, President Obama? They put in right to work in Wisconsin, and you weren't there. Same thing with Michigan. You weren't there. You weren't there during the assault on labor. Where were you? You were helping the corporations that were crushing labor. And look, they also do other things other than right to work. The Supreme Court is going to take up, possibly take up a case that could allow you to not pay union dues and still benefit from union contracts in these shops. So basically, what? You get to freeload off what the union has actually done. So that's a disaster, and that's, of course, going to hurt the power of organized labor. But young people joining into labor, which is the only good thing that we've seen, could actually be a huge deal, because right now, we got unions in this country that are barely hanging on. And there has been, unfortunately, a pervasive idea spread by business owners that unions are bad. Well, I guess if you're the company, of course you would see representation as a terrible thing. But here's some of the things that they talk about. Oh my God, these unions are terrible. They only defend lazy workers. They're hurting the company. And then they funnel money to the Democrats who despise you. Well, to be fair, they have given money to Democrats. Although it was reported on Jimmy Dore show, actually, and this wasn't, actually it was on Aggressive Progressive, sorry. But Jimmy Dore had reported on labor unions that have decided, you know what, we're going to leave the Democratic Party because they're not serving labor anymore. And that's the thing. Democrats had traditionally served labor, but now they realize that they can get far more in campaign donations if they beg corporations for money. So they have left labor in the dust, and they've gone to go work for their corporate overlords. So now, if I had it my way, by the way, on funding, okay, so if you're a Republican, you work in a union shop, you don't want your money to go to Democrats. I understand. So why don't we work together to get the money out of politics? That means no union money in politics, no union money going to corporate or going to politicians. But on the other hand, you also have no corporate money going to politicians as well. The only money that goes to politicians is money that you send them. Publicly financed elections. Maybe that's something that young Republicans might be in favor of. I don't know. But again, I'd eliminate those donations completely. So you eliminate that argument completely. As far as defending lazy workers, yeah, sometimes that happens. But most of the time they defend workers that are also good workers too. So there is a balance, you give or take. But they are there to defend you and to make sure that you get fair wages and fair benefits for a fair day's work. And so if you want that, unionize, get together. So ultimately, this is actually a pretty good trend. And I hope to see it continue. I hope to see more young people unionize and fight for labor rights. Because right now, we need a strong labor union in this country. And, you know, because if there were any time in the country's history where we would need one, it would be right now. Okay. One more story for you guys. And it is equally disastrous. Okay. New court documents have revealed that certain police officers in California have teamed up with neo-Nazi groups in order to go after anti-fascist activists. Now, these court documents are devastating. According to The Guardian, California police investigating a violent white nationalist event worked with white supremacists in an effort to identify counter-protesters and had sought the prosecution of activists with so-called anti-racist beliefs. Now, the records, which showed officers expressing sympathy with white supremacists and were trying to protect neo-Nazis or neo-Nazi organizers' identity, were included in a court briefing from 3 anti-fascist activists who were charged with felonies after protesting at a Sacramento rally. Now, these defendants were there, and they were urging the judge to dismiss their case and accuse California police and prosecutors of a cover-up and collusion with fascists. Wow. Now, one of the organizers, who's charged with assault and rioting after participating in the June 2016 rally, this is Yvette Falarca. She is a Berkeley teacher, as I said. She said it is shocking and really angering to see the level of collusion and the amount to which the police covered up for the Nazis. Now, during that rally, it's important to note that she was stabbed and bludgeoned by a white supremacist. She adds, the people who were victimized by the Nazis were then victimized by the police and the district attorneys. Now the cops are like, oh, no, of course not. We're not working with them. No. Look, hey, we even arrested one of them, but mostly we have went after anti-fascist activists. Now, here's the thing, right? You might be asking, look, okay, so are they actually working with the neo-Nazis? I mean, look, these are strong allegations, right? So what proof, what evidence do they have? Falarca's attorneys obtained numerous examples of CHP officers working directly with the TWP. Now, what is the TWP? That is the Traditionalist Workers' Party. Now, that is an actual fascist organization. They are neo-Nazis. Now, these examples cited show officers treating white nationalist groups as victims while treating anti-fascists as suspects. Now, the TWP, according to The Guardian, is intimately allied with neo-Nazi and other hardline racist organizations and advocates for racially pure nations. This is according to a description by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, its leaders had reportedly praised Trump, and the group claimed to bring more than 100 people to the Charlottesville white supremacist rally, where a counter-protester, Heather Heyer, was unfortunately killed. So, now, you're wondering, like I said, about the proof, right? Here's an example of how they work together. In one phone call with Doug McCormick, identified by police as the TWP affiliate, who acquired the permit for the Sacramento rally, CHP investigator Donovan Ayers warned him that police might have to release his name in response to a public records request. The officer had reportedly said that he would try to protect McCormick. Quote, I'm going to suggest that we hold or redact your name or something until this gets resolved. He said, I don't know who had requested records of the permit and said if I did know, I would tell you. Now, wait a minute. Why would you do that? Why would you go and say, look, I don't know who, I want to protect your identity from an open records request on who got the permit. We think you might be in danger. Now, here's the thing. Ayers' reports noted that McCormick was armed at that rally with a knife. But wait a minute. There were activists at that rally who were stabbed. Coincidence? Maybe. Now, the officer's write-up about an African-American anti-fascist activist included a photo of him at the hospital after the rally and noted that he had been stabbed in the abdomen, chest, and hand. Now, that doesn't mean McCormick was the one who stabbed him, but it's pretty obvious that the activist didn't stab himself. Just throwing that out there. Now, Ayers treated the protester like a suspect in this investigation, trying to find out who stabbed. So you get stabbed, and by somebody, and look, in a rally versus these people who are fascists, right, who are neo-Nazi protesters. So they come into contact, people get stabbed. The guy with the knife is being protected, but the guy who got stabbed, he's a suspect. Yeah. Okay. Let me go to The Guardian. They said the police investigator recommended the man be charged, the one who was stabbed, with 11 offenses, including disturbing the peace, conspiracy, assault, unlawful assembly, and wearing a mask to evade police. As evidence, Ayers provided Facebook photos of the man holding up his fist. The officer wrote the man's Black Power salute and his support for anti-racist activism demonstrated his intent and motivation to violate the civil rights of the neo-Nazi group. This is the cop. How dare you violate the civil rights? You had an intent because you held up your fist and that you don't like racists. We got to charge him. We got to charge him. He was intent to violate the civil rights. But what about the civil rights of counter-protesters? Look, man, in America, neo-Nazis do have a right to protest and to hold marches, of course. And so do the protesters. And look, due to the volatile nature of both sides, you're going to have some, I shouldn't say volatile nature of both sides, but just the fact that you get these two sides together, they're going to have some conflict. There will be some volatility. Now, both sides are not the same. One side says, I don't like you based on the color of your skin. I want to hurt you and kill you. The other side says, no, we don't accept that. I'm on the side of the anti-fascists on this one, as you would think most Americans would be. But not these police officers. These police officers are coddling the neo-Nazis. Amazing. Amazing. Now, Ayers also, his report also noted Falarca's political activism in great detail, referencing her activism on behalf of students of color and women's rights protests. Oh my God, how dare you defend students of color and protest for women's rights? You must also be a dangerous radical who is there to, and you must be violent, and you must be only there to disrupt the civil rights of these fine, upstanding white supremacists. Give me a break. Now, here's another example. Officers also work with TWP member Derek Pineo to try to identify anti-fascist activists, according to recordings that were revealed in court. Officers interviewed Pineo in jail after he was arrested for an unrelated domestic violence charge. What a great guy. Audio recordings captured investigators saying that they brought photos to show him, hoping he could help them identify anti-fascist activists. So this guy gets put into, gets arrested over an unrelated charge, just, domestic violence and all that. And these cops say, hey, this is a perfect idea to go because we know you're a neo-Nazi. We're going to try to use you to go after anti-fascist activists. The officers allegedly told him, quote, we're pretty much going after them. We're looking at you as a victim. You're the victim. You're in jail for domestic violence. You're a neo-Nazi. But don't worry, you're a victim. Amazing. Now, Ayers' report also noted that Pineo was armed with a knife at the same neo-Nazi rally, and that one stabbing victim told officers he believed Pineo was responsible. Now, using video footage, Ayers also noted that Pineo was in the vicinity of another victim at the time he was injured, but that officer ultimately said that the evidence was not clear that he was involved. Now, Ayers' report also included images and names of three other TWP affiliated men who said that they were armed with knives, but who also faced no charges. Now, this isn't the only time that police have been accused of working with and on the behalf of neo-Nazi groups. Last year, U.S. prosecutors targeting anti-Trump protesters in Washington, D.C. relied on video evidence from a far-right group with a record of using deceptive tactics. At an Oregon alt-right event, police allowed a member of a right-wing militia-style group to help officers arrest an anti-fascist activist. Police in Charlottesville were also accused of standing by as Nazis attacked protesters, and a black man who was badly beaten by white supremacists was later charged with a felony. Look, now why would police officers help neo-Nazis? Probably because some of those officers hold those same views. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them are. It's not at all surprising to realize that law enforcement groups have some of these people in them. Because look, what's one thing that these neo-Nazi groups want to do? They want to be in law enforcement. Why? Well, why wouldn't you want to be in charge of the law? I mean, this kind of power is very, very attractive to hate groups. You can't run afoul of the law if you are the law. So, hey, man, that makes sense. And look, traditionally, a lot of police groups, law enforcement group, have been on the same side as white supremacist groups, for example, against civil rights. You have civil rights activists back in the 60s getting sprayed with fire hoses and attacked by dogs. So, yes, they have always traditionally been against minorities and civil rights activists. It's a good old boys club, and it always has been. So is this really surprising? No. Look, police were originally created as the original slave patrols. Now, that's not to say that all police are bad and that all of them are racist. No, no. There are people that get into policing with good intentions. And some of those same officers leave the departments because they realize how bad it actually is inside the departments. And some do stay and try to change the culture from within. So there are good cops out there, but there's also a lot of bad ones. And so I think one thing that would help is if the good cops were actually calling out the bad cops and not being complicit or not staying silent, because silence is being complicit. So we need to do something about this. And look, there's been a lot of warnings of right-wing groups that have extreme anti-racist views trying to get into higher places in both the military and police departments. So I think anybody who has these views shouldn't be allowed to be a police officer. How are you going to serve and protect the public if you hate half of them or you hate a majority of them? So you absolutely need to not allow these people to be police officers. You know, if that involves going into your social media, doing a background check and things like that, okay, that's what we got to do. But things have got to change because we can't have a department that is working with horrific people to try and take down people who are actually defending minorities and defending civil rights and things like that. That is not what the police are there for. Police are supposed to be there to protect and serve, and it's pretty apparent that right now, in a lot of cases, they are not doing so. Okay. Jeez, that is again heavy segment. Not exactly a great bunch of stories to send people off for the rest of the day. But look, that's the stories that I had, and that's the stories that, you know, we're here for today. So, all right, everybody. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. If you want to see more of our content, you can subscribe to the channel. And we'll be releasing, of course, more videos, 5 to 6 videos a day on our YouTube channel. So 5 days a week. All right. So if you want to support us, you can always go to our Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. You want to support progressive independent media, send me stories, send me links. You can do that at my Twitter account, at TYTNation, or at Jeff's Politics. Send me the stories that you'd like to see me cover on the show. Thanks, of course, for sending in the drone story. It was very interesting. Disastrous, but very interesting, and thank you for sending that in. So, all right, everybody. Have a safe and happy weekend. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. Have an awesome weekend. We'll see you guys on Monday. And my cat just came in.